National Democratic Party getting more involved and investing more money
Right.
in not these big races, but in these grassroots kind of races, keeping Gwinnett County purple or even pushing it blue, pushing Cobb County further
Right.
blue, right? Like these are those Augusta to Athens, that corridor of small towns, but that are also really, really diverse towns. So, I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, if they, I fully believe, even for the Georgia House, for the Georgia Assembly, right? If there was more talk about public transportation in the counties, more unified talk about social services, school system, stuff like this, and just had a way of people having their voice heard, is one of the biggest threats to Georgia Red all day.
well, I mean, Georgia, I think Georgia slash Atlanta was voted um, the least economically mobile region in America.
Yeah,
Was
that
I think
doesn't surprise
and they tied it to simply or not simply, but because of the lack of mass transit in the city slash state,
me.
right?
Yeah,
Like you can't get if you live in the city or if you live anywhere around the state, you can't navigate this state without a car. And
right.
so that
And I
also
think
hinders our ability to recruit major corporations who are looking for that operation. So they end up, if we do recruit them, they end up staying in that I-20 corridor so that they could have easy
right
access to the airport. But
now, see the other part of this trick, though. The trick, if you want Georgia to stay reliably blue like that and like a wash, like a total turnover, it will be hard because all the infrastructural things that you have to do would stretch longer than one term, right?
mhm,
So there's stuff that has to almost be in motion and then move from the grassroots up, right? But that's so hard to do. But I think if public transportation could be scaled fairly quickly, right? And those type of things happen. Those are voices that people need to hear. The problem is that most people, I think, in Georgia feel like their voice is never heard.
yeah.
So
I mean,
they just work on the fringes there.
to get something like mass transit done, I think you'd need the perfect storm for Georgia. I think you'd need a Democrat as a president because in order to get transit done on that scale, you're going to need federal government dollars and federal government investment. And then I do think you're right. You're going to have to play the long. I mean, Michigan just did.
This is what you got to do. This is in Georgia. This is my thinking for Georgia, and you let me know because you're better at this than I am. You're way better at this stuff than I am. So if you want Georgia to get mass transit, this is what I think you got to do. You got to say, and we're going to get to this in a second, the national championship for football, for college football, or at least 2 playoff games and Mad Bowl games are played in Georgia, right in the greater Atlanta area, right?
Mhm.
And we got a World Cup coming and the Olympics in like within the span of 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, right? We got major sports events coming with a Super Bowl on the back end of that, right? And because of that, the Democratic president in office has an infrastructure bill that's got hella jobs coming, right? And we just got to get moving with stuff. That essentially would get people to be like, yeah, I feel like that would be enough to get the ball rolling.
I don't think it does because we have the Olympics, right? Like I think.
But look what the Olympics did, though. The Olympics did move Atlanta
Oh, it did.
way far
It
ahead with
progressed Atlanta
infrastructure.
forward rapidly, but I
Right.
think the struggle with Georgia is because so much of the power base of this state lives outside of the city of like it's Atlanta and then everywhere else.
Yeah.
And nobody has done a good enough job articulating what does it really mean to connect Atlanta to Savannah
Yeah.
Augusta, Columbus, Macon, driving that thing all, like what does it really mean from an economic standpoint for us to invest billions of dollars in connecting rural Georgia, so South Georgia to North Georgia, and
Right.
connecting North Georgia in the mountains to Tennessee. Like nobody has done a good enough job. And I'm pretty sure the stuff is out there, but from a messaging standpoint, that's
Yeah.
what the Republican Party has done so well is they coin phrases like MARTA is moving Africans through Atlanta rapidly or something like that's when MARTA was founded. That's
Right.
what they coined MARTA as, moving Africans rapidly through Atlanta. That's what MARTA was called. And so the Democrats do a horrible job of messaging the benefit. Like it's everything is framed as Atlanta, but it's
Right.
not Atlanta. Like, could you imagine the economic impact from a tourism standpoint, or even a goods and services standpoint, if you connected Savannah to Atlanta?
Yeah. I mean,
And you
legit.
could get there and not have to drive a car, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
fam, we there, right? Couples trip to Savannah. Let's catch the train and let's go.
Right.
But like my
Um,
grandmother, crazy thing, and then we can move off this. My grandmother has lived in New Jersey for as long as I can remember. Never learned how to drive.
yeah.
My
That's
grandfather
funny, man.
would drop her off in the morning at the train station, and then she'd take a train from Roselle, New Jersey, to Manhattan every day to go work at Lord and Taylor in their corporate office, and then at night catch a train back. And he would meet her at the train station every day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to this day, this
It
woman is
just
in
hit
her
different.
80s, does not know how to drive, and but led a productive career and never
Right.
and they did well, right? Like, but she never learned how to drive.
And that's where it's like there's just so many opportunities for, I mean, from a higher ed standpoint,
Mhm.
connecting the universities of Georgia, from a tourism standpoint, connecting the major cities or the floundering uh tourism cities like Macon, right?
Right.
Do you know how supportive Macon would be? How supported Macon would be if you connected Macon, if you even had a train that said you could go from Athens, Atlanta, Macon, Savannah, right? Or out to Columbus or something, right? Some trajectory of that, right? Yeah, that you would be good. You'd be like, yo, I'm gonna go down to Macon real quick for a concert, right? And then we go
Yo, but
get
but
back.
think about Georgia and all of these little towns that have declining populations.
Yeah, you need
Because
them.
these little towns were built around the railroad.
Right.
And when we moved away from railroads and we started building the highway system, these highways took people away from driving through these small towns. And what that did was it killed the small
I mean,
town.
literally to for some people to affordably work in Atlanta where the economic value resides, right? You may have to start thinking about, well, could you get a fast rapid transit train from Macon to Atlanta to bring you in, or Macon a Cobb or something like that, right?
Mhm.
You think about those dynamics now, right? Like if you can't afford to live in Cobb, Alpharetta, some of these well neighborhoods, right? But you could live out in Macon and commute every day, but not have to get on the highway for 2 hours. What would life look like? And I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Mhm. Because then you think about like what you're describing now is I'm able to now make Atlanta based salary, but
Right.
then spend my money
And
in
bring
Macon.
that money to other areas that
Yep.
would that could need it. And if you thought about that, it's like, why is that so offensive? But maybe there's other things at play there.
I think it's
You know,
power, right? I mean, I
of
think
course, as most
it's
things kind of
it's
come down
all, yeah,
to
it's
that.
all driven by power. And if I can keep people isolated, then I can
Yeah,
also maintain power, right? And
right.
so it's
That's the
easier.
sucky thing about it, man, because it hurts your state. It really does hurt Georgia. If you are, and that's the part that's like weird about that, right? For some of the, and not all, but for some of the state-sided Republicans that are like, look, I'm all about Georgia independence. I believe that Georgia should be independent, or at least independent in their politics, right? We shouldn't be impacted by the national level of things and what's going on there. But you're kind of beholden to the national narrative by the Republican Party sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And if it's like, if you're actually looking for what supports Georgia the best, that you really need to start thinking dynamically about what the greater Atlanta area
Mhm.
is and redefine what that is. I saw there's a neighborhood out in maybe that's Henry County, where there's like a movie studio, and then there's like a creator neighborhood all around there. And it's like it looks amazing, right? But them people are trying to stay within that area and then spend all their tourism dollars
Yep.
at the malls in Atlanta or somewhere else. If you could bring that money out, that could be a game changer. But
And I think,
you know,
we probably need to have Justin on to talk about this again. He and I were talking a couple weeks ago around Microsoft moving one of their headquarters. Well, one of their headquarters is here in Atlanta. Well, Microsoft ain't employing the people of Atlanta
right.
to work. They literally bought a huge ass plot of land, and they're building houses on that plot around the headquarters.
Right. Right.
And then they're bringing people in to live and work.
Right.
And I'm like, so yes, we're courting these
Major companies, but
businesses to come and work or
right.
come and move headquarters here.
Legit.
But then they're not adding any economic value to the community because they're not employing people from the community.